Nearly 6 years ago, I did one of my first ever test drives, and it was a GMC Acadia, a 2008. And I was crazy nervous having, this was really, I'm driving something very expensive for the first time. And if you go back and look on my channel here, Gallup Journey Test Drives, it's one of my first videos to hit the web. Quite a while ago, and quite a bit has changed since then. Besides now being in HD with better audio, my outlook on life is a little bit different because now I have 3 kids, a family of 5. So that kind of begs the question. 6 years has passed and I've changed quite a bit, but the Acadia actually hasn't changed that much since that first generation. Yes, they've done a refresh to the front end and some of the styling as well as on the interior, but it is largely the same vehicle. So it begs the question, why look at it again? Well, with my new outlook on life, and this being summer and me being a teacher, I recently just traveled 3,000 plus miles with my kids crammed into the back seat of my Mercedes wagon. And it got me thinking, maybe I should be looking at family haulers a little bit more closely. And I came back to the Acadia to try and evaluate it as such. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Now, to tell you a little bit about myself, I am an amateur car reviewer. This is a completely independent channel. I'm in no way connected to the dealerships or the manufacturers of these vehicles, and I'm not paid by them. So you need to take my opinions as such in that they're independent and amateur. But nonetheless, I hope you find them helpful. Thanks for finding me on the interwebs. Let's get started. The most obvious change from the first gen to this refreshed second gen Acadia is right here in the front end. Really love the LED running lights. The new front end to me has kind of retained the handsome looks of the first gen while making it modern enough and distinguishable enough to know that you're getting the newer version. I can't say that I actually think it looks better necessarily, but it does look different and still looks good. As you make your way around the side, you can see the rear window has changed somewhat as well as the rear valance and tailgate area, and most importantly, you have those really cool LED tail lights. Other than that, here on the exterior, mild changes to bring it up to date a little bit, but basically the same vehicle. Now, the refresh from the first gen Acadia was largely the pretty bits, both on the interior and the exterior. Let's talk about the interior here briefly. While that first gen Acadia I thought was handsome inside and out, the inside did leave a little bit to be desired in terms of quality of materials. The design was nice, it was a little bit chintzy in a few places, and I think GM has done a great job here of upgrading those types of things while still keeping that handsome style. The dash here has some nice stitching. It's become softer, but with similar grain now. It's just not hard plastic. They've upgraded, of course, from their older style. It wasn't even really an infotainment at that point. It was really just a radio, to now, of course, a touchscreen. This is GMC's IntelliLink, which, much like all the other systems, people complain about the nuances of them, but I found this one to work just fine. It was easy to pair my stuff. It was fast to respond. I wasn't sitting there touching buttons over and over again to try and get them to do what they needed to do. I just had a couple little gripes, like, for instance, it was hard for me to find the tone controls. I had to really come to a stop and search for those. Once you knew where they were, it'd be easy to access on a regular basis, but it really should have its own button or its own spot on the screen so you can shortcut to it immediately. You got passengers in the back or your kids are sleeping and you want to crank up the jam, so you want to fade it to the front. It shouldn't take sifting through a bunch of menus to do that. But the design and ergonomics of everything here is great. It's easy to control both the front climate controls as well as the rear climate controls for your passengers. There's a lot of cup holder space up here and lots of little cubbies. You're not getting quite the storage capacity you would in a minivan. I mean, if you've ever really seen a modern minivan, between the seats, there's huge space there, often with removable consoles and everything. This is built more as if it had a longitudinal powertrain setup, which it doesn't. It's transverse. So I'm not quite sure why the console here it kind of is as big as it is without having as much storage as you'd think it should. There's space underneath the armrest here with a little removable thing for your sunglasses and all that kind of stuff, and then there's a good sized well underneath that, but it probably wouldn't hold a woman's purse, so it's going to end up collecting a lot of other kind of random bits, tissues and stuff like that you're going to keep in your car, but it works. One of my biggest gripes actually is I wish, especially with this being an American vehicle, that one of these cup holders here in the center was an oversized cup holder. Now, I don't regularly drink like 40 24-ounce sodas, but I do regularly carry a good size, like Nalgene size water bottle, and there's really no place to put it. You're just gonna kind of stuff it next to you or underneath the seat belt or something to that extent. So the interior has been refreshed, it's been updated, it's gonna look good for several years, you know, until the next refresh, and it works both ergonomically and aesthetically. It's really hard to shoot black interiors on white vehicles underneath the blaring New Mexico sun, but I really need to point out why I think the Acadia represents an important aspect of family hauling. And it's right here, captain's chairs. Now you can get these captain's chairs in the second row in the Highlander, you can get them in the Durango, a few other vehicles on the market as well. But the Acadia does something I like. The second row is captain's chairs. The third row, of course, is a bench, but the third row seats 3. And this is an important aspect because that third row back there is probably one of the best in the business in terms of crossovers. It's very much comfortable for adults. I'm 5'8". If you move the seats accordingly, first row, second row, you can actually get pretty comfortable back there in the third row. The windows aren't terribly small, and you know, there's a nice angle to the seat back, and the third row is very much comfortable for adults. And being 3 across, it gives you 7 passenger capacity even with these captain's chairs. Now, why do I care so much about the captain's chairs? Well, as I said, being a father of 3 little kids, any step you can do to make your life a little bit easier when it comes to getting your kids in and out of the car is going to make your life so much better. And the captain's chairs allow someone like my daughter, who's almost 5, to climb all the way to the back and buckle herself in. And my son, who's almost just turned 3, also to buckle himself here in the second row, meaning just the baby needs to be secured by mom or dad. That's a big deal. And as the kids get older, it only gets easier and easier for them to do that themselves, and it just makes your life that much better. However, you still have 7 passenger capacity, so if you need to have a friend or a relative, grandma, grandpa, whoever come along, you have room for them too. So the second row captain's chairs, in my opinion, is a very important feature. Now, the second row here is very much comfortable. These do slide forward and aft to allow you to adjust, like I said, for that third row. I have the seat here with plenty of space in the first row, and I have a ton of knee room. I don't know if you can see it on the video, but I mean, you're very much comfortable right here. It'd be nice if it reclined a little bit more, but it's by no means bolt upright. Now, GM also did do a very nice feature on how these seats move if you want to get to the back without climbing through the second row. Well, first of all, you can fold them very simply just like that, which is a nice feature if you're hauling cargo. But you can also do this little number here when you're not using a brand new vehicle. These things move just nicely. And it creates a nice little pass-through there to get the kids in there if you need to as well. However, with the captain's chairs, you really don't need to be moving them that much. And trust me, it's not as hard as it looks, but it's a brand new vehicle, so they don't want to move as easily as they should. The strength of the Acadia to me really is in its packaging, and that's evidenced back here behind the third row. Powered liftgate, by the way, on the SLE2. Very nice, very handy. But what you're going to notice is if you cross shop this with other 3-row CUVs, crossovers, you're going to see a lot of them cannot fit a full-size cooler like this behind the third row. Pretty important. If you're going to be loading this up with kids and going to soccer, football practice, baseball practice, whatever, you got a cooler full of Gatorade on those hot summer days, you're not going to be able to bring that very easily with these other CUVs. Here you can. Of course, that also translates to luggage space. If you have to put a couple of full-size suitcases back here, you can do that. One laying down, one standing up. It can be done. So as a whole, compared to the competition, the Acadia really shines behind the third row here. Now, as always, if you're going to load this to the hilt with people and try and go on a road trip, this does not provide you a ton of capacity. You're going to need some sort of cargo box or something to do that as well. Or as my sister-in-law does when they travel, they put one side down and they can use that for luggage and stuff while one of the kids sits back there on the other side. Can be done. Now, it's not just for people hauling space. The seats go down very easily, both the second and the third row, and they create a completely flat load floor. It's really nice. I recently took my son, we went over to the Home Depot, I bought a new exterior door for my house as I'm remodeling it, and I put this row down just like this, as well as the second row, moved the front passenger seat up just a little bit, and I was able to slide that door right in on an angle and still let my son sit safely in the second row without trying to put him in the front row. It actually worked quite nicely. A couple of 2x4s, 8-foot 2x4s, they slid in on an angle, no problem. So it really is quite capacitous. Not as big as a minivan, but very much functional if you need to haul some larger items on occasion. Of course, you have what's now become practically the industry standard, that you have this storage well down here where you keep your jumper cables, IPA beers, whatever else you want to just kind of always have in your car. And it kind of gets them out of the way and still allows you to use the load floor and everything else on its own. You got the jack over here off to the side, and it does come with a space saver spare tire underneath, which I think is giving you that space here, but it's a reasonable compromise because it seems like tires have gotten better and I just don't see people getting flat tires like they used to. So again, the packaging of the Acadia is really one of its strengths, especially in the 3-row crossover segment. So let's talk powertrain. To be honest with you, the engine here in the 2014 Acadia is the same engine that I drove 6 years ago in the 2008 Acadia. And that's not really a demerit, because frankly, I like this powertrain. It's a 3.6 liter V6, direct injected, variable valve timing, 6-speed automatic. Has become pretty much ubiquitous throughout GM's lineup in a variety of different applications. Now, I'll just come out and say what you need to hear. The V6 is just fine. It doesn't need to have received major upgrades or displacement increases because it does what it needs to do for this application. Now, it moves the Acadia along, I would say, confidently, just not enthusiastically. And to be honest with you, does anyone expect a vehicle like this to move along enthusiastically? Let's talk numbers. Now, what's interesting is if you cross-shop the Acadia with its competition, Durango, Highlander, whatever, you're going to notice that the numbers, both in power and fuel economy, are very, very similar throughout the vehicle competition, the vehicle choices. And I guess you just can't really cheat physics, can you? So 281 horsepower, 266 pound-feet of torque, which 10 years ago would have been a beast of an engine. Today is just, you know, kind of average. But nonetheless, it returns 18 miles per gallon combined, 23 highway, 16 city. Now, for comparison, the Dodge Durango, their 3.6 Pentastar, produces roughly the same output, but uses an 8-speed transmission, so I think it earns maybe 1 to 2 miles per gallon better, if that, across the board, the EPA cycle. So again, very comparable. Now, for reference though, if you cannot get yourself into a minivan, which is going to be a better choice across the board for a family hauler, you are going to take a hit in fuel economy compared to the minivan. However, if you are moving up or out of a full-size SUV like a Yukon or Tahoe or something, you're going to gain a little bit more drivability and also a few more miles per gallon comparatively. So the 3.6 liter, yes, it hasn't received many updates, but that's not a problem. In terms of driving dynamics, the Acadia is a smooth and quiet ride. Now, some of that for me is, yes, I drive an older vehicle, so stepping into this is a change, but I drive enough new vehicles on a regular basis to know what's smooth and what's quiet. And frankly, the Acadia just soaks up the miles on the highway. It's a great cross-country machine with a lot of space for your family and passengers. So that's something to consider if you do a lot of road trips. What you're gaining by getting an Acadia is that you're not paying the penalty that you get for driving a full-size SUV like a Sequoia or a Yukon or something like that. The packaging's a little bit better, the drivability is a little bit nicer, the fuel economy is a little bit better, but of course you're not getting the capabilities of that full-size SUV. Of course, if you really want to move people and cargo, this is not the best choice. I can't say it enough. You need to be getting yourself a minivan. You got to get over it and buy a minivan because they are much better. They get better fuel economy, they have better space, they're pretty much better at all of it. So the question begs, if you can't get yourself into a minivan and you don't need the capabilities of a full-size SUV, where does that leave you? Right here. So to sum up, why buy the GMC Acadia? Well, it boils down to this. If you're looking at the competition, I believe the Acadia is probably the best choice because of the packaging and space. You have a row of 3 seats in the third row, whereas almost all the other competition is 2 seats. That allows you to get the captain's chairs in the second row, and still give you 7 passenger capacity. None of the other 3-row SUVs, crossovers, can really boast that. And that makes the Acadia extra special. When you combine handsome styling, both inside and outside, good powertrain, good numbers, all of those kinds of things, it really makes a compelling case for this Acadia if you can't get yourself into a minivan. A big shout out to the people that make this possible. I just always have to do this because Rico Auto Complex of Gallup, New Mexico, I've been working with them since I started doing this in 2008. They partnered with me and have been very gracious and helpful no matter what. So I go down there, talk to them, find something to test drive, and they're always accommodating. They've been in business for generations and generations, decades upon decades. Check out their link in the description. As always, a big thanks to you guys. I want to do a little experiment here. I'm curious how many people actually watch these videos to the end. So if you can, in the comments below, let me know if you actually did watch it to this point. Thumbs up if you did. I know they're kind of long. But nonetheless, it's your subscribing, your liking, your sharing, and those comments that keep me doing this. I appreciate your support and the comments and conversations we have that come out of this. Hope you stay tuned for more videos to come from me. See you next time.